All right, so we talked about the why is it different thing in the database about how is the instructional objects we have different than our four basic instructional strategies, if you will. Now, these are the tool types we use for those. We might use a lesson, an assignment, a quiz, or a forum, but I want to go in a little bit more to say what do we mean from that, because sometimes people say, oh, so what you're saying is just using the assignment tool type is too basic. How can I go and jazz it up a little bit? And that's not what I'm saying at all. The assignment tool type is great for doing very rigorous, engaging, different instructional strategies, because that's only using the tool. It's not how you use it. So what I mean by this is not the tool type. It's actually these pieces here. So when we talk about a lesson, and we say, how are you going and making a lesson that goes beyond the basic lesson is very much direct instruction or lecture. In other words, I as a teacher, I'm sharing with you some content you need to know. I'm basically telling it to you. And you could do that in a text-based lesson, you could do that in a video lesson. Now there isn't anything necessarily wrong with that, but if you go beyond that, if you use other instructional strategies, that can lead to more learning. If all you have is this one strategy to share content with people, there's going to be places where it doesn't meet the need. Now that's just like, a different type of lesson might be scenarios, where you're providing scenarios to students and such. We say that they're more engaging, but if all you're doing is providing scenarios, you have the same issue. Assignments. So for this example, a simple assignment is, hey, I've got some questions I want you to answer. Type these up, and submit that to me. Or here's a task I want you to do to demonstrate a skill or concept. And then when you're done, you submit it, and then I grade it. Okay, so as you can see, within that, there's a lot of wrinkles you can add to that. So maybe you don't submit it all at once. Maybe there are phases you submit something. Maybe I'm not the one grading it. Maybe it's self-assessed or peer-assessed or whatever the case is. All of those things go beyond a simple assignment. And obviously, if it's more than just, here's a task, go and do it, if you can add in some other wrinkles to that, such as we're talking about like role playing and other things like that, that goes beyond the basic assignment. All right, the quiz. Quiz is basically, a basic quiz is selected response. So I want to see if you know this content that we talked about. Here's some multiple choice, true, false, matching, or other computer assessed questions. Those are called selected response. So there's basically one response that's correct. I mean, you can set up so that some are partially correct, but they're set up so that a computer can go and grade it. It's kind of, do you know this or not? And that's the basics, and it has its value. Now you can use the quiz for other instructional strategies, and we'll talk about some that go beyond this basic one. But that's kind of what people think of when they think of the basic quiz. And then the basic forum, I use this example because within AA Learning Online, this has been kind of what's been settled. You give them a prompt, and this is a generic open-ended question, or it can be a series of questions. And then basically the forum is share your thoughts on this, then reply to 2 other people. And the reply to 2 is, if you say reply to 3 or reply to 4, that's not changing the basic forum. Okay? Just put your initial thoughts, read what others say, and reply to them. That's again it in a basic nutshell. As a professional development provider, what I want to help our teachers do is go beyond these basic types. I want them to have more strategies. It's kind of, having more arrows in your quiver, having more tools in your toolbox. But I don't want to confuse us with the term tools over here, but having more things at your disposal that you can go and use, and that makes you more powerful as an instructional designer because you know how to use those. You don't have to know like all the strategies, because there is no way to know all the strategies. You can invent your own strategies. You can be very creative on this too. It's not like there is a master list out there. I do have the book that we shared in the class, and I've got it right No, this is not it. This is one of the ones. This is by Patty Shank, the Online Learning Idea book. It's a toolbox that goes into that. And then the other one is the Curtis Bonk book, which I am not seeing up here. Had I been more prepared, I would have pulled that down. I wonder where I put it. Typically, it's right up there. Somebody must have it right now. So, at any rate, and there isn't 95 proven ways to do it. There's a lot of different ways, but this is a great idea starter for me and others in here. So, let me talk about the things that we've done in OLLI just to give you a variety of different strategies. You might have experienced these strategies but not thought about them, or again, if you're continuing in the OLLI series, these are other things too. And these are just the 4 OLLI courses. These are, I think, most of the strategies. I don't think they're all, but so one of the things to get beyond the share your thoughts is to do more of a video forum where you have people go and engage with video. By using video in a forum, you can add visual elements. There are a lot of things that you can do in a video forum that you can't do through text. You get to know a person better. That's that whole social presence aspect that we talk about. You can demonstrate things, you can illustrate things through video that you can't do through text. So it's a very minor wrinkle that goes beyond the basic instructional strategy. It does require the embedding of video tool types within a forum tool type, which is doable, but it shows you how you go beyond that. Okay, Jigsaw is a way in which you go and get more. It's a structured way of going through the read process as well as the reflect and display process. So Jigsaw is, I'm going to find some articles which illustrate some different thoughts around the content. Okay, we think of lessons as a way of demonstrating content. I don't have to use my own lessons. I can go and find articles out there. And then instead of having students read all the articles, they can read some and share. Now you can do that in a structured way where you give 4 students 4 articles, each one reads one, and they're responsible for sharing with the others. Or more unstructured, pick your own articles, share those, and then with the articles you didn't read, go and see what other people in the class said. Either way, it gives them a little bit, it introduces choice into the assignment. It takes away some of the workload, but still gets them a way to go through the content. Share forums, we've talked about a little bit in this class. A share forum is a simplified forum where you do not add replies. From a strategy standpoint, it's meant to be quicker, and it's meant to reinforce that this is more on the sharing. The replies is more superfluous. There's no point in replying to things when I've shared, hey, here's a really good resource I found. Okay, so maybe there is a place that you want to reply to that in some situations, but a lot of times there isn't. So why have people do it? The blind forum is where you have students go and post something without being able to see the replies afterwards. We do this in the assessment class as well as a couple others, where students are going and they're providing their own thoughts. Like I might have them grade an assignment. Here's a sample assignment, grade it, explain why you grade it that way. They can't see what other people said until they pose their own thoughts first. Then they can see what they're said, because that way their thoughts are, they're putting themselves out there, then they can go in and calibrate their own thoughts later on. Okay. We've talked a little bit about role plays and scenarios before. A role play is a take on the assignment where you have students go in and complete assignment through the lens of a particular profession or a particular set of circumstances. I do this again in the facilitation class a lot. You are a student that is share with us some different what you might be experiencing. You're a struggling student. Share with us what you might be experiencing. Now you're the teacher working with those students. That type of thing. Again, role plays get people in beyond the just monotony of basic forums so that it's a little bit more directed and such, and it actually helps them kind of get more active and become alive. Scenarios is very similar to that, where you're having them think through a specific situation and reflect to that. Now, resource sharing can be done with a basic forum type. It can be also done in a lot of other places. We use in a couple of our LA classes, we use RSS feeds where students share things via Digo. Like I go and I find a resource and I then bookmark it, and then that comes up in the Digo feed. We don't use Pinterest in our LA series, but other teachers use that as a resource sharing site. And there's some people who really love Pinterest, and it's a good way of going and sharing that. But if you want to have a situation where students are encouraged to go out and find their own resources, that's a good strategy to have them do, is to take those and find a way in which they can collectively, an ongoing manner, continue to share those. All right. A rules quiz is a quiz that we do at the beginning of the class, which has individuals kind of understand the basic rules for the course. It could also be an expectations quiz or a quiz over the introduction. It's not a quiz as you might normally think about it. It's typically not a quiz that's strictly graded, because you pretty much want the students to get 100% on it, so maybe they can retake it several times. Another one is a student-built quiz, and this would be a quiz that instead of me as an instructor creating the quiz, I have my students create the quiz. They submit the questions. I take the questions that they put, and I create the quiz, and I give it to them the next week, or whatever the case is. The next one is more kind of a general category, a course resource development. So in your course, you're going to have students go and collaboratively develop some sort of resource. Now, we've done that through wikis in this class. That might be like, okay, we're as a group going to make and collaboratively share a chart, and we're going to fill out that chart, and as a group we're going to complete it. Okay, you could do it through Google Doc. You could do it a lot of different ways, whatever the case is. In our facilitation course, students collaboratively create a netiquette policy as a policy type that they go and create. One very specific application of that helps you kind of understand this is doing a course glossary. So as students go and find terms they don't know, they can put it into the glossary. Either they find the definitions, or they ask the instructor, this is a term I don't know, and the instructor puts it in. And then by doing so, you've created a resource that students can go in and can add. Now, you can make that an assignment that students have to find those answers, or just something that they contribute to, but it adds more of that resource level to the class. Again, resources being something we're going to talk about more in week 5. The scavenger hunt is a strategy where students go and find things within an environment, whether it's a website or whatever the case is, and then they show that they've found those through some manner, whether they're videotaping themselves or they've collected different artifacts, they do screen grabs, or whatever the case is. A debate is a strategy where you pose a question, and there's two sides to it, and then you have students go and argue one side over the other. Now, you could assign them a side, you could let them take a side, but they've got to take a stand. A dilemma is similar to that. A dilemma is where you pose a question where there is really not a good answer. And some people say it's kind of the damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing. And so they have to go in and, again, take a stand to argue, to talk about this. These go beyond the forums where it's kind of like, well, I'm sharing my thoughts and I can just share whatever I want. This goes and actually identifies something that they have to look at. Synchronous discussions. These are things where a lot of times online courses get a bad rap by being, you're just on your own and you're not engaging with them. You can require students to team up with other students and actually have a chat or a video conversation, and then have them go and record that and then share that with the instructor to be assessed. Or you could have several do that. You don't have to be like whole class discussion either, or you could. You could say, we're going to have 5 synchronous discussions. You need to attend 3 to get credit for it. That gives them some choice. Or you could go in on your groups. Your groups could choose when you guys are going to meet. But as a group, you need to, and you have to be participating, and this allows me to see your participation. Again, synchronous discussions allow an interactivity that goes beyond a simple forum type. A recorded demonstration is kind of like a video assignment, but you're telling them instead of typing up your answers, you need to actually go perform this on your own and record yourself doing it. Think-Aloud could be done through recording, it could be done through typing, and that's kind of, it could be like a student journal, or it could be whatever the case is, where students are just, they do a process already, and now they're saying out loud what are the thoughts going through their mind as they do it. Icebreakers we cover quite a bit throughout classes. That is a specific strategy type. Critiques. This is where I give students something and then they go and assess it via rubric. And we think of that sometimes as grading. A rubric doesn't have to have grades with it. But it could just kind of classify something or characterize something. What category does this go into? That type of thing. And by critiquing, again, you could have it so that students do this individually and test their own, assess their own understanding, or you could have it be that they share those with other people, and you can do it blind too, so they take their first stab at it, then they see what others have said. Okay, one way to do that is you can actually have students go and rate other students' posts. And we get into that, and some people think, oh, that's grading, but you can actually make it so that students in a forum are not necessarily, you're not grading what the student has said, but you're grading what they're talking about. You're rating, I should say. So I could do this. In our assessment class, we have students go out, actually, yeah, I think it's done there. It's actually also done in the Molly Designing Online Lessons course. They find a lesson out on the internet, and they share that in a forum. Other students go and critique that with using a 5-star rating method, and they give it a rating of 1 through 5. This is all done through the forum tool type, but it's a way of getting it so that it's not me as a teacher assessing. Students are doing that. They're working through their concept and their understanding and sharing their thoughts with others by actively critiquing this. So it actually kind of starts with the do in R2D2 and moves then into display. And then finally, the last one is a personalized plan. And we do this, the biggest place we do this is in our personalized learning class, where students create their own goals and they work on them. The instructional design course and the practice course is a little bit of that. You talk about what you're going to create, and then you kind of set out and you create that, even though I structure it and say you're going to create these units and such. But you can open it up even more than that. You can say, I as an instructor am not putting in parameters to this at all. You can create your own plan for this course of how you're going to do this, and you get to describe the artifact on how you're going to do it and the timeline and that type of thing. And I meant as an instructor, I might have veto power, but I'm not telling you what it is that you need to do. So all of these are instructional strategies, and this is a big bulk of what we do. And there are a few others I believe that are not on this list. This isn't an exercise in seeing how much I can do in terms of instructional strategies. I've seen classes where literally that's what an instructor's trying to do. They're like, oh yeah, I can do 20 of these in one class. That's not a good thing either. It's okay to have some that are bread and butter for you too. And one thing is that if you use debates in your class, it's not a bad idea to do that repeatedly too, because then once a student learns how to use the debate instructional strategy, they will go through and do that and be quicker to do that later on in the course. They'll know how to engage within a debate. So the second time they do it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, now I got it. And the third time, yeah, this is old hat. Rather than, okay, now I'm doing a blind forum. What are we doing here? I got to learn that. Okay, now I'm doing a Think-Aloud. I got to learn how to do that. I'm not saying it's bad to stretch students, but I'm also saying that you have to, as an instructional designer, weigh how much mental lifting do I want students to do? Cognitive load theory. And sometimes you have to reduce the cognitive load for students to get at that content. And you can do that by just honing in on specific strategies teaching those up front, and then by the end of the class they know how to do them. Whenever I use DIGO, for example, in a class, I use DIGO repeatedly throughout that class, because if we're going to take the time to learn how to use it as a tool, we're going to get our money's worth for that. So that's something that's important to think about. And that's not to say that in a different class I might use different strategies and such. And as I said, this is the tip of the iceberg total, because, you know, I mean, people have created books with 95 of these things in them, 100 of these things in them. That's what the Blanc book has, and it just goes up from there. So this is not a limit by any means, but I wanted to give you an idea, because these are things that as you're going through the OLLI series you're going to experience, and you might not have thought about them before, but it's a way of taking your basic 4 and really getting into them a little bit more. And it's a way of doing so that we don't talk about when we talk about conducting assessment or creating lessons. It's at that strategy level. So if you ever have any thoughts or questions, or you have any any feedback on instructional strategies within your course, just let me know. Always happy to give my thoughts on those.